So today I've got a device that I think is interesting for a couple of different reasons. One main reason, this is called the Mi A2, and it features Android One. Now, I know this is a controversial subject matter regarding the idea of Android One, stock Android, various other skins that exist on Android devices. Look, I'm a fan of what's familiar in most cases when it comes to operating systems. So when I see something that looks and feels the way that Google intended, I get excited. Now, that doesn't mean it's gonna be for everyone. Some people like certain features on certain phones that come via the skin that is installed on there. So this is a personal preference type of thing. The Mi A2 is the latest Android One device from Xiaomi. I did do a video on the previous one, the A1, and I liked it for the price at that time, especially when you consider how limited the options are for stock Android experiences. Now there are a couple more, but this is still a leader in that department, especially right now because this thing is actually on sale at AliExpress. I'll have a link down in the description. It is Brands Shopping Week. Recently, I did the video on the Pocophone. You guys loved that. You clicked on it, you watched it. The stuff that's happening at this end of the market is really interesting. It's like finally getting some serious quality at lower price points. Now, that device is $300. Let's go even further in this case to almost $200. Now, the version I have in front of me is the 64 gigabyte, 4 gigs of RAM. It's the gold one. Now, you can see here you have a dual camera setup on the back, dual SIM, a 20 megapixel front-facing camera. This one has a Snapdragon 660. It's not quite as powerful as the Pocophone, but again, we're at a different price point here, and there are some advantages to that processor. It's very power efficient, so even though this thing only has a 3,000 milliamp hour battery, it's probably going to be decent on the 660 processor. And then, of course, the thing that excites me the most, Android One, it's like I pop this thing open no matter where I am in the world with the global version here, and I have a familiar interface. I also get rapid updates. I get security patches, all the nice stuff from Google. I get it more quickly via Android One. I am glad that these types of devices exist. When I was in India, I met a bunch of you guys, and man, the Mi A1 was so popular. It was probably the phone that I saw most frequently. I had to do a follow-up on this because I know how hot this device is in certain parts of the world. Pretty straightforward, clear case, but they give it to you. You can't hate on that. I see a dongle, so unfortunately, we do not have a dedicated headphone jack. We are moving into the dongle universe. There it is. Mi A2, 12 megapixel plus 20 megapixel AI dual camera, large pixels. The pixels on here are combined to get better low light performance, and there's various other advantages. Fingerprint scanner is in a good spot. This off-center camera unit, you got a little bounce. Type-C connector down on the bottom. There's also a light version of this phone, which actually has some features this one doesn't. It's also on promo right now. It has slightly higher resolution, and it has a headphone jack. So even though it's called light, maybe it's not so light. This looks like an IR blaster. You could use this as a remote control. We have a standard power adapter here, though this phone is capable of quick charge. As far as golds go, I guess it's kind of nice. It's subtle. The familiar face of Android One. Now, at this point here, you're looking at an almost 6-inch screen in a universe full of notches. This is somehow kind of refreshing. We don't have to notch out absolutely everything. All right, so let's quickly set up the fingerprint on this, register my index finger, and test this out real quick. You can probably tell it's not the absolute quickest. There's a bit of a delayed animation there. But again, we have to adjust our expectations to match the price point. Just over $200. I can live with that. Immediately, I'm comfy. You see, I'm comfortable. It's looking like a pixel. It's feeling like a pixel. You swipe up from the bottom, pull down from the top. It's completely stock experience all the way into the settings. Of course, every device I use, or at least a lot of them recently that aren't stock Android, I'm putting a launcher on. But that launcher doesn't extend into the settings menu, so there's a bit of a lack of cohesiveness and relearning. That's happening to me right now, in fact, on the P20 Pro, where I go into the settings menu and things are just laid laid out slightly differently, and therefore it's a little less comfy, at least immediately. So when an operating system is consistent across devices, you can change over more rapidly. Now, that's obviously why manufacturers are reluctant to make stock devices in the first place, because then you can flip between them more quickly than if you buy into whatever their ecosystem or whatever their skin and whatever special features they happen to have. I think people are compelled by the fact that you're getting an OS that looks like it does on a much more expensive phone like the Pixel or Pixel 2 XL. Now, I've heard the speaker is supposed to be pretty loud on this, so it might not have the best sound quality that I've heard, but it's louder than I expected. Now, you could pretty much completely cover it on the bottom here. I'd say that speaker exceeds my expectations, actually. It's quite loud. The camera, okay, cool. Now, I was hopeful that because this is from Xiaomi and because I recently tried out the Pocophone with the 20 megapixel front-facing camera, I was hopeful that this one will be similar, if not the same, because I was impressed with that selfie camera on there. So let's go ahead and check out the results and see if it is, even though it's a lower price point, actually look quite similar and quite impressive. This is where things are getting crazy. Once upon a time, if you were spending close to $200 on a smartphone, it meant you were making some significant compromises in the camera department. You would get some terrible selfies. I mean, even recent devices like the BlackBerry that I was using, the front-facing camera was terrible. But if you know where to look and you know where the value lives, all of a sudden it's like, whoa. Maybe it's not the best in the world. For the price, it's like detail, holy bananas. The rear camera is a dual setup, 12 plus 5 megapixel. So first up, no depth effect. Beer in the foreground, plant in the background. Very little focus fall off there. Image-wise, not bad. Again, yes, we have lighting here, but come on now. Now we will try the same shot, but with the portrait mode on. And I'll select the bottle. The depth effect. Boom. The plant is a little bit more blurry, but it's not really over the top. It's believable, kind of. Yeah, there's better ones probably. Obviously, there's some better smartphone cameras, but still, at the price, it's like keeps getting harder to justify spending the really big bucks on smartphones, all things considered. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. You're like, Lou, where does it stack up? How do I compare it to other devices in the similar price range, similar price bracket? Because there are so few Android One devices, then you're limited in your choices and you probably would choose this one. But if you want to extend your pricing a little bit, like you want to go up to 300 bucks into the Pocophone range, then you get a better processor, you get a bigger battery. No, you don't get the Android One program, but you certainly get some things you might like. You get a design that I personally liked a little bit more, as opposed to this more traditional aluminum, which actually happens to be a bit slippery. You kind of have to figure that out for yourself. If you want a deal, I mean, this thing is a deal right now via the AliExpress link that I'm gonna have down in the description. That's a deal. That's kind of tough to beat. Myself, I have a high level of appreciation for the stock Android experience. You've heard me talk about it before. As far as what that's worth to you, that's going to be up to you. I mean, that's a really hard thing to quantify. Whereas the value associated with the software interface and the skin that's on there is more subjective. It's more personal. For me, it has a lot of value. And if I was in the $200 price range for a smartphone decision, I would seriously consider this one, if not just select it straight away. So because of that, this is a major pick for me at the price range, and especially at the current promotion. There it is, another Android One development. One thing to remember, if you want to save even more cash and go down to the Lite version, the A2 Lite, you actually get some things that this one doesn't have, like a bigger battery, a headphone jack, and expandable storage. So the Lite version is not so light. You let me know down in the comments. Can you name a better phone or a phone you would rather have at this current promotional price, 210 bucks USD starting for the Mi A2? Do you have a better suggestion? Because if so, I want to hear it. For me, it would probably be this one, Android One. I think it's a cool thing, and I hope it continues because options are good. Selections are good.